and welcome. So, today onwards, we are going to start with ISC class 11 syllabus. Today I'll be doing the first part of the first chapter, the living world. This is what is there in your ISC syllabus. This has been given in the ISC scope of syllabus. So, we are going to be following that strictly. Alright, so let's start with the first topic, that is living. When can we call something as living? Now, when we talk about living, we are going to be considering those organisms which are going to be made up of cells. So, all living beings are made up of cells. This is there in the cell theory. This is a very important point in cell theory. But here we have an exception called the viruses. They are living beings, but they are not made up of cells. They are considered living beings because they are going to be reproducing with the help of a host cell. Next, we see the growth or cell division. Now, cell division is of two types, the mitosis and the meiosis. Now, reproduction. Next topic is reproduction is by sexual or asexual means. Asexual reproduction means when the reproduction is with the help of any somatic cells or vegetative cells from the particular organism, whereas sexual reproduction involves two male and female gametes coming together, two different gametes, that is male and female, they come together and they form a zygote. So a male and a female gamete is going to be joining together to form a zygote. Alright, so male is normally haploid and female is also haploid, and this zygote is normally diploid. This is the kind of sexual reproduction that happens in organisms. Now, next topic is metabolism. Now, when we talk about metabolism, we are seeing two terms, anabolism and catabolism. So, metabolism is the sum total of all biochemical activities that is happening inside a living organism. So, let's take some activities, for example, the digestion, which results into breakdown of starch and forming of glucose. Next, we see respiration. Respiration is breakdown of food and utilizing the food to make ATP. Next, we have photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, which happens in plants, we see glucose formation, but it is from carbon dioxide and water. Now, if I see these kind of reaction, for example, the first one, digestion, where there is breaking of or substances and formation of molecules by breaking of bigger molecules, we call this kind of reaction as catabolism. So, it is cutting down of something, so we are going to call it the catabolism. Alright, so that's the way you can remember this term. Photosynthesis is formation of a new substance, that is glucose. So, if there is a formation of new substance, we call this kind of reaction as anabolism. Now, let's come to the respiration. In respiration, there is a breakdown of food to produce energy. The energy is in the form of ATP, that is the energy currency. So, when it is breakdown, obviously it is known as the catabolism. But when it is breaking down into smaller particles, here there is a series of reaction. In between this series of reactions, some intermediate products are formed. These intermediate products can result into formation of further smaller molecules, further biomolecules. So, these can form other biomolecules. Since these molecules are helping in formation of other biomolecules, these reactions are helping in doing so. So, that's why we don't call it, again, we can't call it catabolism only. So, we can call it anabolism also. Since it is having the characteristic of both being catabolic and anabolic, we call this kind of reaction as amphibolic process. So, respiration is known as the amphibolic process. Next, we are going to be studying about consciousness. The most important point about living organisms is that they have a consciousness. Now, what is the meaning of consciousness? Or stimuli, that is responding to a stimuli. Whenever a cell faces some situation, it can be positive or negative, it can react to it, it can respond to it. In simpler organisms, in unicellular organisms, we are going to be studying about the cellular reactions, whereas in higher organisms we are going to be seeing that there are a series of systems, series of reactions happening in particular systems. For example, in human beings there are two systems, that is the nervous system and the endocrine system. Together they are going to be helping us in responding to any external factor, any external changes. These external changes are known as the stimuli. For example, a plant always moves towards the sunlight, right? The sunlight is the stimuli. So here we can understand that consciousness is a very important factor about a cell. Any cell can be dead also, they can be just lying there, dead cells can be there, but when they start responding to a stimuli, that is the time when we can call it a living cell. Next we are going to be seeing what is the need of classification. Now, first of all, to understand need of classification, we need to know that there are organisms, there are vast number of living organisms that is there around us. Okay, so we call it the biological diversity. So biological diversity or biodiversity, since there is so many types of living organisms around us, we have to classify them properly, either to study them or to understand them. But in any case, we need to classify them so that it becomes easier for us to use them for our benefit or to understand them properly. Alright, so whenever we do something, we use it for our own benefit. Human beings study biology to understand, and we apply it in our day-to-day life, right? So that's the reason we have to study all these things. So here also, when we are classifying certain animals or plants, because we need to study them for what? To make it easier for us to understand them and use it for our own benefit. So what is the need for classification? To study the different organisms easily, to make our study easy and convenient for us. To identify the organisms, say every now and then there are new organisms, new species are discovered. So if I don't know which species belong to which particular category of the classification, we are not going to be able to understand what is the kind of species we have discovered. For example, there is a discovery of a butterfly. If I don't know that it is a butterfly, it is an arthropod, it is from the class Insecta, it has some characteristics, I won't be able to understand that anything that flies is a butterfly, or anything that flies can be called as birds also. Can they be grouped together, or they can be separated? So to understand that easily, we have to classify them on the basis of their characteristics. Next, to find the evolution relationship. Now, if I don't know how the organisms have evolved, we won't be able to understand their features properly. For example, some of us, like human beings, have evolved from apes, right? So if I go into further downward portion, I can actually know that human beings actually have evolved from fishes. From fishes, we have come to the higher class mammalia, right? So from class Pisces, the fishes is known as class Pisces. So class Pisces to class mammalia, where we belong to, there is a series of evolutions that happened, because of which we have come to where we are now. If I don't know how we are related to each other, the studies becomes very much problematic. For example, if I find a fossil, that is the next point also. If I find a fossil and I don't know that does that fossil is of an elephant or of a tiger. So I won't be able to actually understand the fossil and classify them. So if I don't understand them, if I'm unable to classify them, it is useless for me. The fossil, if I'm just getting a fossil and it is just we are vague about it, we don't understand that where it belongs to, how will be interested in that thing? We won't be interested in it because it is not we don't even know about it, right? We don't even know about that fossil. Then how can we even study it, right? How can we find the evolutionary relationship? How can we understand that is that animal that we have found, is it related to the reptiles more or is it related to the birds more? So we have to understand the fossils, but for that we also need to know the characteristics of reptiles and fish or birds also. Like for example, I have got a fossil. Now it has a characteristic of reptiles also and characteristics of fishes also. So if I find that fossil and it is having the characteristic of fishes and reptiles, I should know about the characteristics of fishes and reptiles also. Then only I can correlate them, right? So that is the importance of understanding and needing classification of organisms. That's why we need to classify organisms. Next, we have the definition of certain terms. For example, the first term is taxonomy. This study that we are going to do, that is classification of organisms, in our further classes we'll see how the organisms are classified into different types, okay, different groups, different kingdoms, different classes, different orders, families and all these things. So if I have to classify them, if I am classifying them, there is a huge vast study on that particular part of biology. That particular study is known as taxonomy. Now when we are studying it, we are studying with some particular features, right? So we have to take some feature from like for example the anatomy or the physiology or the biochemical reactions or the ecology, the habitat, all these things we consider, and then we actually compare them with other organisms and we then try to classify them. This study of these features, we are going to call that as systematics. So taxonomy and systematics are related to each other. How? We are using systematics to understand taxonomy. We are using systematics to understand taxonomy, means we are classifying the organisms on the basis of their features, and the features are studied in the taxonomy. Now this is known as a taxonomical hierarchy. So first is the species, then genus, then we go further up, family, class, order, phylum, kingdom, domain, life, all these things. Now we are going to be studying about each of them in the next slides. Now first of all, let's understand the meaning of species. So species means any organism which can look morphologically similar, morphologically and anatomical similarities they should have. Okay, any organism which has morphological and anatomical similarity. Say for example, in that way we know a cat and a tiger has very much morphological similarity, right? So if they have so much of morphological similarity and anatomical similarities also, or say a cat, or let's take an example of a tiger and a lion, right? They also have very much high morphological similarity. But can they interbreed? That is the third point. Can they interbreed? Yeah, we know tigers and lions can interbreed, and they have given rise to a new organism. But the problem arises with this new organism. The new organism that is found out, which is going to be a mixture of lion and tiger, can that particular organism give rise to further new organisms? Can it actually produce offsprings? Can it be fertile to produce new offsprings which looks similar to each other, which has same characteristic as itself? So can it be possible? Then the thing comes that no, it's not possible, because they are sterile in nature. They are not fertile, so they can't produce new offsprings. That's why we can't consider lion and tiger as from the same species. We can call them only from the same species if they can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. So a very important point about it is this one. They should descend from common ancestors. They should have similarity in biochemistry. Means we can't say a tiger and a plant is from the same species, obviously, because tiger can't make its own food. It depends on someone else and eats up something else from other organisms, gets its nutrition from other organisms, whereas plants can make its own food by the process of photosynthesis. So their biochemical reaction is quite different. Next, we see they have similar karyotype. This is a karyotype of an organism. What is the meaning of karyotype? Karyotype means when I am taking out the chromosome, total genome content, the total chromosomes, and I am just putting it out like this. Now, this is not like we are just simply arranging them in a proper order and numbering them. Okay, so this has been given numbers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and all these things. We know there are 23 pairs of chromosomes in human beings. This is a human karyotype. So in the human karyotype, we have seen that there are 23 pairs of chromosomes. Out of this, 22 pairs are the vegetative chromosomes, somatic ones. They are known as the autosomes, whereas the 23rd one is known as the sex chromosome, which consists of the X and Y chromosome. This chart is known as the karyotype of human beings. Alright, so they should have similar genetic material also. Then only we can call it that they are from the same species. Now here we can see some examples that is there in your syllabus, which you should be learning up thoroughly. Say the first one, the meaning of species, we know that species can interbreed amongst themselves. Now a group of species forms a genus. A group of genus forms a family, and so on it goes on, and finally a group of kingdom forms a domain. So that's the last stage. Alright, so that's the last stage which we are going to see. Now here there are two terms, phylum and division. Phylum is for animals and division is for plants. So that's why the two names are there. So let's take the example of a man, which we know very easily. Now when we see the first thing, first is which domain does man belong to? Man belongs to the domain Eukarya. Man belongs to the domain Eukarya. Then this Eukarya includes plants and animals both. So man belongs to the kingdom Animalia. Then we are going to see the kingdom Animalia consists of many phylums. For example, it will be consisting of invertebrates also, vertebrates also. In the invertebrates, we see many phylums. For example, the phylum Porifera, phylum Coelenterata, all these things. There is also one phylum called phylum Chordata, which includes the animals which are vertebrates. So here in the vertebrates, this phylum Chordata, we can say that man belongs to the phylum Chordata. Now in the phylum Chordata also there are 5 classes: class Pisces, class Reptilia, class Mammalia. So out of that we know that man belongs to the class Mammalia. Then amongst the class Mammalia also there are other organisms, and we know that it will be that there are other things like Carnivora also. Carnivora is there are different organisms which are going to be there. For example, the lions and tigers, they belong to carnivore. Okay, so they are known as carnivoras. So we are going to be considering the Primata. Man belongs to the order Primata. Then it belongs to the family Hominidae. And finally we see that genus is Homo and the species is Sapiens. So here we are just trying to minimize the differences between them. All right, so if I consider the animals that is there in kingdom Animalia together, there are many differences between all the animals. A butterfly and a man is never the same, right? But when we come to chordata, all the chordata, like for example the fishes, the reptiles, so they are all going to be having a vertebral column, but they also will be differing from each other. So we are reducing the number of dissimilarities in the next step in the kingdom Mammalia. As we go down this chart, the number of dissimilarities decreases and the similarities increases. We have more similarities if I go down this chart. So that is how we can say this is one example of a man. There are other examples also over here. So that's all for today.